Welcome back, everybody. We are back doing Up at Noon yet again. We're joined by Caleb Lawson. You work here at IGN. You are a huge Platinum Games fan, and I'm sure you were heartbroken at the news that their big Microsoft exclusive game, Scalebound, got canceled.
There might have been a few tears involved, yeah. It's been a rough week.
So, quick catch up. What was Scalebound?
So Scalebound was a game directed by Hideki Kamiya, the director of Bayonetta, Resident Evil 2, Devil May Cry, Okami, Beautiful Joe. Dude has a really good record, right? Scalebound was his next big game. It was an action RPG, a 4-player co-op action RPG.
Wow.
Drop in, drop out co-op with giant bosses and a giant AI-controlled companion, kind of like The Last Guardian. So it was a lot.
It was ambitious.
Yeah, I was going to say ambitious is the word to describe that. Now, this was in development for a few years. It was a Microsoft exclusive, one of the most gorgeous games that they're making, or that they were working on. And I think it was interesting to see them kind of lean into a Japanese developer for an exclusive game, because we haven't really seen anything on this level since something like Blue Dragon. Very, very long time ago.
Yeah, Lost Odyssey.
Now, this game was unfortunately canceled this week.
Yeah.
And I'm really sad about that on sort of an artistry level, because there's so much involved here that now just goes away. And what happens to everything we're looking at here, right? Does this just get shelved, trashed, put on a hard drive somewhere?
Well, so that's the question, right? I think the biggest question that we still don't have an answer to is who owns the IP.
Right.
Who owns Scalebound? Microsoft has canceled it, but does Platinum have the ability now to shop it around to someone else?
I believe I remember
find funding and make it.
I believe I read that Platinum still retains rights to the name. But
so we don't know that.
Do we not?
We don't know anything about that. That's the thing is, IP ownership is one of those weird things, and in the past, Platinum hasn't really owned much of their IP, right?
Right.
The whole issue with Bayonetta, right, was that Sega owned Bayonetta.
Yep.
So in order to get Bayonetta 2 on the Wii U, basically Sega had to be involved with all that.
Which is why you see a lot of licensed stuff from them as a brand, but we haven't seen. I mean, even like Beautiful Joe you mentioned, is sort of a Capcom thing way back.
That was
in the day.
Capcom, yeah. I mean, Capcom owns that IP. IP ownership rate is, this is sort of super inside baseball, but it's all down to the contracts. And without knowing what the contract was and who signed what and who retained ownership on what, we don't know. What I do know, though, right, is that this game was super, super personal to Kamiya.
Yeah.
This was a passion project that he'd wanted to make for years. Actually, I think it's, in some ways, he talked about how it was about his relationship with his father. It was some deep stuff that meant a lot to him. So I'm assuming if there's a way for them to revive it, if there's a way for them to retain ownership, they may want to.
Right.
Or maybe you just cut your losses and run, right? When you pour that much of yourself into it and it gets canceled.
I guess so. It's very different than, say, making a movie or something where you can just they had a proof of concept for Deadpool a couple years ago, and they put it out and it turned into a full movie.
Yeah.
This is the opposite. This was supposed to be a game, and it's playable. Someone is playing it.
Yeah, I was going to say, this is pre-alpha gameplay, but this is something. This isn't like a trailer. This isn't pre-rendered. This is a prototype of some sort.
Yeah.
They had something of a system there.
I think the press got to play it at Gamescom in 2015.
Yeah. And you think that even if they're not going to be making this massive co-op RPG, maybe they could, no pun intended, scale it down to something, make them just more of an action game.
I guess, but I think that was the whole part of the mission, right? Was that Platinum is known for their action games, right? That's what they do really, really well. And I think this was an opportunity for them to do something different, do something a bit bigger, and really push themselves. People will say what they want about Drew and his headphones.
Yep.
But
Beats by Drew.
This could have been something really, really cool.
Yeah,
right?
I totally agree. And so, I guess we can sort of theorize about the way a game like this does get canceled. Do you think that Kamiya came to Microsoft and said, I need another year, I need another 2 years, and they looked at the bottom line of how much that would cost to keep a studio running, making a game of this size, and they said, well, that versus the sales that are projected for this thing, and then it just goes away? I mean, is there you look at something like The Last Guardian, right, which kind of limped out on its 9th or 10th year in December of last year. I actually really enjoyed a lot of that game. And
Me too.
I'm glad that we got to play it. Ultimately that decision was left to the gamers. But this is a business, and is that how something like this just goes away forever?
I mean, my guess, right, is it probably does come down to different goals and different expectations. I do know, right, that I think some of Platinum's biggest successes have been games where they've been let alone to sort of do their thing, right? Bayonetta and Vanquish, back when they first started, games like Metal Gear Rising, where they came in and sort of saved it for Konami, right? Where in that case, I think they had it was like a year-long dev cycle, and Konami was basically just like, just do it, just make it.
Yeah.
And that turned out great too, right? And that shouldn't have turned out great.
But that was right in their wheelhouse too.
Yeah. And so, I know that Microsoft is super hands-on, right? And they have their goals that they need to hit, and they have, they view their portfolio a certain way, and they have certain goals. And I think Platinum, they wanted to make the game they wanted to make, and maybe there's some conflict there. I don't know.
Is this possibly a story about how it's becoming a more and more dangerous risk to take a bet on a new IP? Because, I mean, you mentioned Metal Gear Solid Rising. I feel like that's a game that had they asked for an additional year, they would have been like, sure, we know this is going to sell well. It's got Metal Gear in the title. People know it. This is a tough one to convince people on. I mean, even your elevator pitch for this game is a lot, right?
Yeah. And God, they were doing so much of it too.
Yeah. Look at all this.
Yeah, this is huge.
I mean, right? It was like Zelda. It was gonna be like Zelda-style dungeons.
Oh man.
But like with this giant AI companion and a huge overworld, and the fact that it was 4-player drop in, drop out co-op, and giant bosses. That that boss they showed off at E3, I believe it was this past year, 2016. Obviously that demo was dumbed down for being able to be played on a stage to show you kind of a concept of what a boss would look like. But just the scale there was insane.
So now I do want to end on a kind of positive note, because Platinum is not going away. Their studio has not closed. They are continuing to make games. What's up next for them? I know they've gotten licenses in the past, and that's worked to varying degrees. Stuff like Korra and Ninja Turtles, not so hot.
Yeah.
Their Transformers game was rad.
Yeah, the Transformers game was awesome. That was directed by Kenji Saito, who also directed Metal Gear Rising. But what they have coming out now is they're working on Nier Automata with Square.
Oh, wow.
That comes out in, I believe, March and looks really cool. There's a bunch of footage of that on IGN right now.
So you get a Platinum game in 2 months, basically.
Exactly.
That's pretty interesting.
They do also have that pre-existing relationship with Nintendo, who I think is... Maybe they're announcing something later?
Yeah.
I mean, Bayonetta 2 did not sell too hot.
And
there's always hope.
The Wonderful 102.
They also have 2 games in development right now in Japan for mobile and browser that may never see its way to the West, but that's kind of a new thing for them. But also just yesterday, when they were making when Platinum made their statement about this cancellation, I mean, Kamiya-san has said, we're working on something new and giving it our all.
Yeah.
What that means, who knows? I mean, it's a talented group of people, right?
Yeah.
And I have no doubt that they have the ability to create an amazing game.
Yeah.
It's just sad when the business of games gets in the way of the creativity and the artistry and the fun of games.
What I think is really just heartbreaking is how much of a waste this feels like. Like, it would be really cool if they could just donate this half-finished game to, like, I don't know, a game design school. Like, kick it out to the fans who will finish it. Like, because there are fans who will make stuff like this, and they'll do it from scratch. But having like a half-built game and being like, here you go.
Yeah.
But I mean, obviously there's, politics and money involved.
Exactly. Who owns it?
I think it's kind of like when you read those stories about like H&M getting a bunch of returned T-shirts and they send someone in the back to like cut them up and destroy them instead of just giving them out in the street. Ultimately, Microsoft did fund this thing to a degree, and I don't know if they're comfortable with just giving it out like that.
Huge
But I love
tax
that
write-off,
idea.
maybe.
But if you're looking for silver lining too, obviously Platinum learned a ton from this game, right? It was a huge departure from what they'd done. It was their first game for one of the modern consoles. It was an engine they hadn't worked in before. It was online co-op, which they'd never really done before outside of Anarchy Reigns. So they were doing a ton of stuff they hadn't done before. So at the very least, I hope they learned a ton, and those learnings will make it into whatever they do in the future.
Awesome. Well, Caleb, thank you so much.
For more on Scalebound, keep it right here, and maybe we'll hear more someday.
No, it's canceled.
Someday, I don't think we've heard the last.
Dragons never die, bro.
Dragons never die. Caleb, thank you so much.
Yeah.